The Spin-off Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Iams Pet Food. When you choose Iams dry dog or cat food, you can see a difference in your pet with your own eyes. Healthy energy in 5 days, healthy digestion in 10 days, and healthy skin and coat in just 25 days. Satisfaction for you and them. Guaranteed or your money back. Feed Iams dry dog or cat food and see a visible difference. Visit iams.com/difference to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Kia ora, I'm Mad Chapman, host of Behind the Story. We're on holiday at the moment, but here's something we cooked up earlier. This was from Help Me Hera Live as part of the Spin-off's live events this year. This event was at Hannah Playhouse Theatre in Wellington back in September and follows up with 3 letter writers to the Help Me Hera column to see whether or not they took Hera's advice and if so, how it all worked out.
Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai, haere mai. Welcome to Help Me Hera, live from the Hannah Playhouse. Please put your hands together for our hosts this evening, Madeline Chapman and Hera Lindsay Bird.
Kia ora koutou, I'm just looking at this iPad which now says you no longer have permission to access this document. Let me just see. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for coming out on a quite gorgeous Wellington Sunday afternoon. My name is Madeline. I will be taking you through this lovely afternoon with our world-renowned advice columnist, Hera Lindsay Bird. Please welcome Hera Lindsay Bird. I was unfortunately not joking about that. Hera, would you like to do a quick intro while I just do some...
Classic. Thank you so much for coming out today, everyone. It's really... nerve-wracking to be talking about advice in a public forum. I sort of have this feeling that like maybe halfway through our event, someone in the audience is going to stand up and be like, "You told me that I should put down my dog and I did and my life is ruined." But also that would make for a great podcast, so please feel free. I would never tell anyone to put down their dog.
I may just need to get the owner of the iPad to come and sign in, please. What I do know about my intro is that today the format is that we will talk a little bit about the column in general, and then we will dive into the archives, and we've picked 4 problems, conundrums to revisit from the past 18 months. And Hera has gotten updates from those people about what they did with her advice, if anything. So we will essentially recap what the problem is, talk to Hera a little bit about how she approached giving advice for it, and then hear from the lovely people what they did. The voices you will hear are not the real voices of the people who wrote in, just to be clear. The voices are random spin-off writers who just happened to be in the office when I needed people to voice these problems. So keep an ear out for all of your favourite writers. But that is the program for this afternoon, and it is going to get started so soon, I promise. Well, I reckon we'll just get straight into the first update now that we've wasted enough time. Thank you for your patience. Our first update is titled, Help Me Hera, Men I Haven't Seen in Years Keep Crawling Out of the Woodwork.
I don't even know who that woman is.
You live a privileged life. Actually, I don't know which Kardashian that is. Khloe Kardashian.
Khloe.
So our first, Hera does not pick the images, just to be clear. We pick the images and sometimes get a little bit cheeky with them. So the first update comes from a letter from February of this year. This woman wrote in with a dating conundrum. Specifically, she was single in her early 30s and finding it very challenging to find love. But at the same time, she had multiple men from her past randomly reaching out to connect. One guy even travelled to her city on the pretense of a holiday. But then once they reconnected and slept together, the men disappeared in a cloud of smoke. The letter writer ends with quite a few questions, actually. Am I an idiot for responding in the first place? Are these men just out for a quick lay or a place to stay? But then why all the emotional labour up front? And why not just say that? Am I really bad in bed? Have they idolised me in some way? Just the other day, another man messaged me out of the blue asking how I was and am I still single? Should I respond? What is going on here? I read this as someone who has not had this problem and just went, wow, what a funny coincidence. That's the only explanation. Did you know what was going on when you read this question?
No, I mean, it's weird getting letters because you sort of don't know whether you're dealing with an unreliable narrator. So you sort of don't really know. Like, I was like, oh, has this woman posted like a bunch of really good selfies on her Instagram page or something? And she just kind of hasn't put that up front. It's still a mystery to me. I'm fascinated. And I feel like if this was like a good Jerry Springer show, we would bring on one of the men in question and we'd be like, what was going on with you? My best guess was that it was like a sort of, grass is returning to the savannah kind of like weird generational thing because, there's all of those, it's like in your Saturn return, when you're sort of in your late 20s, like everyone sort of breaks up with their partner and then gets together with someone else who they kind of then end up having kids with. And I was like, maybe it's just like the perfect gap and everyone has just broken up with their exes all at once, like there's been a big spring, like wrecking ball situation and suddenly she's getting all of these DMs, but I don't think we'll ever know.
I think I did notice for a while I also could see the questions coming in, which I no longer look at just for my own time management, but there was a really high percentage of questions that came from a certain demographic, which is usually 30s, maybe 20s, 30s, often romance related, often quite frustrated in a romantic sense. Why do men never ask you for help?
I mean, they could be men pretending to be, well, because that's the other thing. Like, we don't actually a lot of people do write in and they have their Gmails connected, and so I can see their photo, and so I know who they are, and that's fine. Often that people sign it with their own name, and they'll be like, "Can you please make this anonymous when you publish it?" And so then I sort of know who's writing to me, and yes, it is predominantly women, but I think that there could be a lot of people sort of doing a bit of gender subterfuge there and just saying, and just not wanting to be recognised and thinking, oh, it's too obvious if I write in as a guy, I'll just change my pronouns, whatever. So don't know for sure. But yeah, there's definitely I get a lot of women in their early 20s writing in with questions like, I've just turned 19 and my life is over. I'll never make anything of myself. I can feel myself slipping into the grave. What do I do? Like, how do I make a career? Which is it's so lovely to me because it's such a perfect anxiety that you can just be like, listen, you really don't have to worry about it. But then the other part of it is lots of people who have kind of come to a crossroads often in their relationships, and that sort of tends to happen a bit later. So we do get particularly lots of women in their late 30s. And I think also that's probably because I am of a similar age and gender, and so people kind of maybe feel more comfortable writing in with their problems to someone who's kind of sort of been through that stuff already. But yeah.
If you are a man or you know a man, please invite them to send their problems to Hera. We would love some diversity in the inbox. You end with you sort of theorise a little bit in your response about what might be bringing these men out of the woodwork. But ultimately, this woman doesn't seem to be enjoying, well, maybe briefly enjoying reconnecting, but overall doesn't seem to be getting much satisfaction out of it. So you end with, I'm a big advocate for crawling out of the woodwork, but that doesn't mean you should just sit around waiting for the next message to land. Why not take matters into your own hands? Think of all your romantic near misses, long-lost crushes, and people you met at exactly the wrong moment in your life. Are any of them single? Perhaps it's time to graduate from woodwork crawler to woodwork crawlee. After all, if you can't beat them, you might as well join them. This feels like kicking the can down the road. But that's quite bold advice to essentially, because what you've created is then the potential for a man to email you saying, this woman has come out of nowhere, crawling out of the woodwork. What's going on?
I mean, I think it's actually a pretty good dating strategy. Like, if you've been in a relationship for a long time and you're newly single and like you're kind of looking around at your limited New Zealand Tinder options, like it's quite romantic to make a connection with someone that you always had a crush on all of those years ago. And I think that's kind of what this woman is experiencing, like, and it's just sort of, for whatever reason, maybe nostalgia has kind of gotten the way of their perception of each other and they don't really actually have that connection. But I kind of think it's a good way to go. Like, I know a lot of people who have got together have had those like, well, we were in a class together when we were 19 and I always thought about them, and, you know. So, like, I hope that she did, like, crawl into some DMs because, you know, it goes both ways.
Well, this letter was answered in February, so it's been about 8 months. Here is what this woman did with Hera's advice.
Hi, Hera. It was a bit of a funny time for me with dating. Your advice to flip the switch was the perfect antidote. I think it helped me get back on the horse. I definitely put myself out there more, and it helped me to find a new perspective on the search for love. I think when you've been dating for a bloody long time, approximately 10 years for me, it becomes actually just ridiculous and hard to find perspective. I had some fun, then about 2 months after the advice, I decided to go on one last date before calling it quits for a few months. Of course, the date was with a wonderful guy from the apps. I like the picture of him biting into this thing called a chica roll in Australia, mystery meat in a delectable deep-fried crust. We have great communication, and he's one of the most emotionally intelligent, kindest, most generous dudes I have ever encountered in a romantic sense. High wit, great taste in memes, and loves a long walk. What more could you want? We are 6 months going strong.
First of all, give whoever voiced that a raise. It's great voice acting.
That is our lovely, iconic designer, Tina Tiller, who was very surprised to be asked to do anything on the microphone and absolutely took to it. That's an incredible outcome.
Yeah.
A+, 10 out of 10.
I mean, it had absolutely nothing to do with me, but, like, good for her. Actually, my absolute favourite thing about that update is I'd read a tiny bit of it before when we were going through these, and she sent me this, like, really cute message that this new guy she was dating had written, like, this ode to the chica roll. And I think he might have done it with ChatGPT, potentially, because it's, like, quite weirdly written, but it's like this... His contribution was this, like, beautiful, long, like... wrapped in layers of pastry. The chica roll is one of the premium foodstuffs of Australia. So it's quite cute that she sort of also involved him in the response, like even if it was just to promote an Australian fast food product none of us have ever heard of.
There does seem to be some kind of standard lines, particularly for women in dating, which is like, be confident, try to have fun, put yourself out there. Is it hard for you not to just say that? Like, do you have to really get creative to try and like give unique ways of sort of being like, back yourself, you're cool?
Yeah, I mean, that's the trouble with advice is there's probably about like 3 or 4 phrases you could just like give to anyone that would be like the correct advice solution. And it is kind of it does get difficult to try and find different ways to say that to people again and again and again. But then like think of being a therapist. Imagine having to do that every day at work. Yeah. The tikka roll and things like that help because you can kind of tie it into a metaphor about the delights of like
you can do it.
Love is like a cheat. No, I won't.
You have said you hope to achieve, one of the things you hope to achieve in this column is to be invited to a stranger's wedding.
Yes.
I think this could be you playing matchmaker and getting invited to a wedding in, who knows, 6 months if they're excited about it.
It is one of my main ambitions, and it doesn't even have to be anyone who writes into the advice column. Anyone in the audience who's getting married, send me an invitation.
So I would say we're 1 for 1 on successful advice. Update number 2, a little bit, I would say probably a little bit more relatable for a lot of people. Yeah. I think we've all probably gone through some version of this, maybe not to this writer's extent. The second update is, help me Hera, my friend dumped me and I don't know why. So this comes from a letter way back in July of last year, and the letter writer had a friend who for a few years was very close. They ran errands together, they had deep and meaningfuls, they went to flat viewings, went to raves together.
Baked cakes together,
like very close friends. Then quite abruptly, the friend started to leave messages on read, and then eventually, I think after about a month, sent one final text saying she didn't want to hang out anymore and wouldn't be responding to any more messages. The end. So the letter writer acknowledges that perhaps this is not a her problem. This might actually have nothing to do with her, but her problem is that she's still thinking about it months later. She ends, I've got to know from the only advice columnist I can trust to step on my neck if I deserve it. What would Hera Lindsay Bird do? You did not step on her neck.
No, and I also did not tell her to do what I would do.
Oh, okay. So I would like to hear what you would do, and then I would like to hear what you told her to do.
I would be too chicken shit to do anything at all, probably. I mean, I think that hers is quite a unique situation because, like, we've all had experiences of kind of having friends that you sort of slowly drift out of contact with, and then maybe catch up with again and kind of renew that friendship when you're at different places in your life. But her one was quite a weird one because her friend kind of reached out to her to be like, just letting you know, I will not be talking to you anymore going forth. Please do not respond to this. Goodbye. Like, with no explanation, which is kind of like a next level of brutal, really. Like, I think that, you know, if you just drift out of contact with someone, there's lots of reasons why that happens and it's quite easy to forgive. But to leave someone on red like that would make me so paranoid. Yeah.
You mentioned in your response the HRification of friendships, which I immediately understood. Is everyone familiar with the HR lingo in relationships? It's basically, there's all sorts of memes and things, but essentially sending quite formal I do not have capacity to talk to you right now. Please circle back in a few months.
Yeah.
And it sort of sometimes gets mixed in with a bit of therapy speak of setting boundaries, things like that. This seems quite an intense version of that, kind of zero contact and then a very sort of stern, formal, resignation letter from the friendship, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, that HRification thing is a big sort of meme now. I think that if you're a young person and you're kind of, interested in reading advice and stuff, you'll have encountered this before where people kind of... I think it's a particularly American thing, and so we kind of don't really get the full extent of it over here. But, people saying, hey, I don't really have, enough emotional space to talk to you about your problems at the moment. Please check in with me in 6 months, which seems like a really, hostile, cold way to, run it. It's like the... in the, what am I trying to say, the IT industry where you would have a morning scrum and everyone would be having a kind of very mindful meeting, which was also, I don't know. Anyway, it's a bit of a weird one because she didn't even give any context. I think at least in that scenario, you're supposed to kind of provide an explanation, and this person really just left this person with a total mystery, and it's, yeah.
You've suggested, which is something you would not do, but you have suggested that this person ask for an explanation. So you said it's not crossing a boundary to tell her that you're hurt and to ask for a better explanation. You probably won't get one, but it's a reasonable request to make. You then say, don't take it personally. Even if you did do something wrong, she's done something wronger. Her behaviour says more about her than it says about you, and what it says about her is that she sucks. You don't often go in that hard on somebody, even when they're sort of the quote-unquote villain in a column. Were you quite pissed off at this person?
I just thought it was so mean because I just... it's one thing to drift out of contact with someone, but maybe it spoke to my own personal paranoias, but I was just if I got that email from someone and I had no... Because she kind of tells the person, don't follow up with me, don't send any emails or anything like that. I would be up to 3 a.m. every night thinking about that until, 6 months had passed or something like that. And I think that's kind of why, I'm such a coward. If that happened to me, probably I would actually not ask that person. It kind of falls into that category of advice where I'm oh God, I have to tell someone to do something that I really would be afraid to do. But I think that sitting and stewing about it for 6 months, to me, I was okay, well, that's worse than just coming out and being can you please just tell me what the fuck is going on? Because, at least even if it was something bad that she heard about herself, it would she could kind of find a way to move on from it instead of perpetually wondering, well, did I do something wrong or yeah.
You did mention, and as much as you ended with she sucks, you did acknowledge that the likely explanation is something to do with her own...
Yeah.
She's dealing with something completely outside of the friendship and it's kind of consumed her life. Here is what this lovely letter writer did with your advice all these many months later.
Hi, Hera. I took your advice about snooping online to see if I could glean any insights into her mental state and ignored the advice about asking her for an explanation. True chicken shit. Long story short, she's been going through it, but hiding it very well. And I've taken to a comforting narrative that it was a girl so confusing situation rather than a personal slight. It's helpful that I can't verify or disprove this due to the aforementioned being too chicken shit to reach out. But most of all, 1, your response was genuinely very therapeutic and validating, so thank you. And 2, I've accepted the fact that the two of us are probably no longer the same people we were when we were friends, and so am totally okay with not being in each other's lives. Not to be all insufferable, but I think if I ran into her, I'd be able to wish her well and radiate a bit of loving kindness, etc. Sometimes I think about reaching out or fantasize about bumping into her after just having returned from a yoga retreat in Greece with an unbelievable tan. But mostly I don't stress about the whole situation. I think she does have a decent support network of friends without me, and so I hope she's getting what she needs.
Another pretty good outcome, especially for your just leave it, it'll be fine method of solving problems.
I mean, I think she actually did something wiser than what I told her to do. Like, I think that probably her confronting that person would not have been productive because, you know, well, first of all, like when she sent that update, I had to be like, well, what's girl so confusing? And then I had to be like, well, what's the deal with Lord and Charlie XX? And I went down this whole pop culture wormhole, which was very enlightening. But I guess that sometimes her not having confronted that friend, maybe it makes it easier for them to pick up again later in 10 years as if nothing had ever happened. I mean, maybe she would want to do that one day after she's come back from a yoga retreat looking really tanned.
That is the very New Zealand way to
It
just
is.
pick up as if nothing ever happened. I will say this kind of, this was very validating to me as I am one of, I'm sure, many people who has a unsent handwritten letter to an ex that I thought would solve everything, that I am extremely grateful I did not send, because that is excruciating. But sometimes you have talked about patience, and sometimes not doing something is, in fact, the best course of action.
I don't know if that's like a New Zealand thing, because like to me, like if you leave things alone, they'll resolve themselves, which is also like my approach to going to the dentist. So it might all go horribly wrong in 20 years. I'll be back on the stage with like horrible teeth and broken relationships, and I'll be like, maybe everyone should have said something. But you know, there is something to be said about kind of just sitting with something for a while, and definitely not sending off that 10-page letter to the ex. Although I agree, I think it can be very therapeutic to write it and never send it, as long as you're really, really, really careful not to put an address in the email to thing before you put it in your drafts folder forever.
Not to get all serious, but thanks to New Zealand Post, it's really hard to accidentally send a letter now.
Run a restaurant and you learn pretty quick. The sound of a crisp fry starts way before the first bite. As delivery and to-go keeps business booming,
Order for pickup.
McCain's SureCrisp fries keep orders crispy.
Hey, delivery.
After the trip, the crispiness comes through. McCain's SureCrisp fries. Go the distance. See how far our fries can take your business at surecrisp.com/delivery.
Hey Atlanta, Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, you know, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
What's up, y'all? It's Joe Budden, here to talk about Prize Picks. Football season is heating up, and Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action while watching football. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. The app is really simple to use. Pick 2 or more players across any sport, pick more or less on their projection, and you could win real cash on your lineup. Prize Picks even invented the flex play, so you can still cash out if one of your picks doesn't hit. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match players from different sports. Real money sports action while watching football.
Download the Prize Picks daily fantasy app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Update number 3 is one of our most read Help Me Hera columns. Yes, I mean,
How funny.
you would not be surprised. It is titled, Help Me Hera, I Need My Partner to Eat Some Goddamn Veggies. What a lovely... Do you know who that is?
I do indeed. There are cathedrals everywhere for those with the eyes to see.
Interesting that you know him, but you don't know the Kardashians.
I would have known if it was Kim. I just don't know the others.
This letter cracked me up a lot. It opens with the sentence, I need my partner to eat some vegetables and I don't know how, which is just an incredible way to open a letter. The letter probably could have stopped there. That's essentially the problem. The partner does not eat vegetables. She does not know how to get him to eat vegetables. But she does helpfully go into detail about how her partner is caring, supportive, etc., but is afraid of vegetables. Meanwhile, she loves veggies, and not in like a little side salad way, but is vegan and bakes cakes with parsnips kind of way.
Raw carrot brined hot dogs, I think was one of the examples she gave.
She did acknowledge that was gross, so let's not throw her under the bus. So basically, she just wants to be able to cook a lovely veggie dinner for her meat-loving partner, but doesn't know how to coach him into eating what is, frankly, the largest food group that we have. So as soon as I read this, I was like, ooh, Hera's going to love this. What was your first reaction?
Yeah, I love this letter. I thought this was such a funny letter. And it's something that's quite close to my heart as well, because like I have like food groups that I'm just like, that is disgusting. I do not want to eat it. But it's like weirdly one of the things that you don't really think about when you're getting into a relationship with someone. You're like, oh, well, like we get along and we have like so many good movies in common and we love to do this on the weekends. But like food is kind of one of those things that you sort of don't really find out about until you're kind of actually living with someone. And by then it's like too late. By then you just have to like eat a courgette while your partner's out of town because they will never have one in the house. So it was a really like fun kind of high stakes, low stakes question. Yeah.
This is Jordan Peterson, as I'm sure people know. He does the famous beef only diet. I did that for a week. I literally did not shit the entire week. So this man cannot be like a healthy person. I don't know. Can you be a healthy person if you don't touch a single vegetable?
I don't know.
This is not me asking you for advice.
I mean, I think there are lots of ways to be unhealthy, so he's just found a pretty unique one, but...
So you essentially said to try some different approaches, but don't try too hard, was your advice.
Yeah.
Quote, it's worth having a think about whether this is sustainable for you. If he truly never eats another vegetable in his life, would it be a deal breaker? Are you happy cooking separate meals for the rest of your life? As a food lover, it's a huge compromise to make. People have broken up for dumber reasons, and it sounds like the situation could quickly become tiresome for you. So what is not included in the letter is how long they've been together. That was not noted. So we don't know whether this is like 6 months of no veggies or like 10 years of no veggies. 10 months. Thank you. Well. We will be circling back to you. So we've got 10 months. Someone has just told me. I mean, that's a decent amount. That's a decent amount of time, but also not so long that, that does feel like a little bit of a crossroads. You're still in that, like, you're not deep set in the relationship yet.
Yeah, you can still be having like a kind of running pros and cons list, and that would definitely be a big one of the cons.
What did you said backstage that you thought, based off the letter, that this woman had no intention of leaving this relationship and was more looking for ways to manage or to hopefully change the vegetable situation, as opposed to like just telling her you should just go.
I mean, I guess that whenever someone writes in with a relationship problem, my initial response is always, well, they care enough to write in about this person. Like, clearly there's some investment going on. I would never assume that they would break up based on an issue like this, because I know a lot of women in heterosexual relationships have stayed with people a lot worse than that for them not eating celery. And so, you know, I mean, and it's not the hardest, it's not the most serious problem in the world to overcome. Like, if you really, really love someone, you know, you could have a plate of veggies on the side. Like, there are ways you could kind of work it out. But it did seem incredibly tedious. And I think that also the decision about whether, you know, you want to start a family with someone, that would add like a lot of sort of extra complications. But I'm also like, I know what it's like to be a picky eater. Like, apples are so disgusting to me, and I can think of the amount of relationships I've had where someone will be eating eating a fresh apple casually in the corner of the room, and I'll just be like, that's disgusting. Like, they're clipping their toenails or something. So yeah.
Sounds like you really related to this man in the letter. I mean, that was you answered it on the 20th of June, so that's not that long ago. So not a lot of time has passed, but this is what has happened since.
Kia ora, Hera. I was hoping to make your Wellington show, but have seen it has sold out already. Great for you, not so much for me. My update is I didn't action any of your suggestions, and my partner broke up with me less than a fortnight later. So safe to say, maybe he was too afraid of vegetables, or really that it wasn't working out for him. In all honesty, I wrote my letter to you knowing that things were rocky between us. I either needed to act on my relationship concerns or just be willing to accept everything because I loved him. Turns out it didn't really matter in the end. I suppose what I'm saying is, yes, he was very doubtful of vegetables, but deep down I think we both had doubts about each other. And really, the vegetables just exemplified bigger concerns once the honeymoon period was over. My friends who know I wrote into you have been enjoying reading my question and your response. They've loved having a good chuckle after my frequent requests for inconspicuous vegetable recipes. This past weekend, I downloaded a dating app in an effort to get back on the horse and not be sad. I must admit, I've been actively scouting out guys who like food, and hopefully, vegetables.
When you read this, did you think this is just a symptom? This is not the actual problem? Because I think that is quite common in advice columns where someone will say, oh, it's so annoying, my husband, you know, does this kind of fairly minor thing, but in describing the minor thing, you get all of these like huge resentments piled up over here, which is the real issue. Did it feel like this was like a deeper thing, or did you really just think, oh, this is just a weird problem to have?
I think I just thought it was a weird problem because, like, there are lots of problems that are like that. You know, like we had that great one, which is like my husband always leaves the dishes by the sink, which is like such a classic problem. And to me, like, that sort of shows, well, there are deeper things going on there, right? Like, someone is like not really taking someone else's leisure time into account. But like, I think with food preferences, it's just more basic than that. Like, I just don't think a lot of people can help it. And so, like, I try not to be like, you know, because I've got my own weird food stuff. I don't think that there's anything deeper going on than that. But it is a really annoying problem nonetheless. And like, you know, if you really care a lot about food, I feel like this is ultimately a good outcome, because I feel like this person's life is going to be improved by like not having to order off the children's menu every time they go out for a nice meal.
I mean, the letter writer did say that she had managed to get him to eat a butter chicken, and that was like a huge win.
Yeah.
So, you know, his next partner can thank her for that, I suppose. I don't know where we land on that. That feels net neutral, I think, in terms of an outcome. Great to be back on the horse. I'm assuming that was you that yelled out, but maybe it was just someone who intimately knows this relationship. Yeah, and I think maybe that is just one of those things where you go, oh, I didn't think I cared about this that much, and actually now I need to make sure that I don't date another person who won't eat a vegetable.
Yeah, maybe it's not even something you can ever prepare for, but it's something you can kind of look back on and be like, oh, thank God, at least my partner doesn't do this, you know?
All right, we're on to our final problem. Well, this one's not really a problem, I would say, as somebody who shares the problem. This is from a letter writer in March who said, help me, Hera, how do I stop being the nosiest person alive? So this is a nice low stakes problem that I'm sure lots of people can relate to again. This honestly could have been written by me. When I read it, I was like, this is exactly what I think about everything. But the letter writer keeps it very short and explains that they are supremely nosy, researching every person they meet, snooping around every bit of gossip, and rifling through the junk drawer of the house where their pet's sitting. They say, to be clear, I do not and would never do anything with this information. I hate having the information because I'm worried I'll accidentally spill that I know it to whoever it concerns, which happened once in my tween years. I know this is a terrible habit. How do I leave well enough alone and stop acting like a truffle pig when I see snooping potential? Are you a nosy person?
This was such a relatable question. I love. Yeah, I think we're all like, everyone who's kind of grown up with the internet has like become emboldened to become like the lead detective of their own private detective agency. And I love knowing, I love a bit of gossip. And I just, even the research for the researcher's sake, even if you sort of don't know who this person will be, like, I like to go to, that's an interesting Reddit comment, and I look through everyone's history and be like, okay, well, they're from Arkansas, they work as a welder, they've got a couple of guinea pigs. Like, I wonder if we could narrow this down a bit more.
In the interest of full transparency, a colleague about 5 years ago at a party said in passing that they had once sung into the microphone at a Beyonce concert and were really off key. You know how there's those videos of like, you know, when it's like to the left, and then she like gives it to a person who just screams. Hello. So they said that. I spent 4 hours that evening. One, I had to find her social media profiles, figure out where she was living, because she had kind of narrowed the years down, learn that she was living in London, realise, okay, when was Beyonce in London that year? Where did she perform O2? All of this stuff, and then go on YouTube, and I watched about 100 clips of people singing this song at a Beyonce concert, and eventually found the video. It had like 400 views. And I just watched it and went, great. And never brought it up, never told her I'd found it. Couldn't find it now if you asked me to, like, don't have the time. But that was a high that I have not had in a long time.
Yeah. New Zealand is such a good country as well for like, because you can just, there's enough people that if you go overseas and someone's like, do you know Peter, he's an accountant, you can be like, oh yeah, I know Peter. And so like we're a nation made for snoops, because there's like enough people that you can kind of have a bit of privacy, but also like not really enough that you can't be found out, which I think is also why it's hard to run an advice column in this country, because everyone is so careful about what they share. Like we get such kind of carefully written questions that don't want to give anything away.
Sorry, I just had like a Freudian choke, because I have written a question to you and I was so terrified that it was such a bland question as well. But I was like, they're going to know immediately that it's about them. And no, most people don't.
Would you want to know a weird thing that happens to me all the time is that I'll answer a question and I'll kind of know who the person is, because occasionally, like I said, their email address will come with a question, and so I'll be like, okay, well, that's so-and-so from that place. But then sometimes if it's like a question that seems Like, I think I had one about someone who had made art and they were jealous of a rival, and I had about like 20 people emailing me and be like, was this so-and-so? And like, they were all totally different people. But I've had to reassure so many of my friends that, like, I would never tell them who the person was, but I can be like, I can explicitly tell you that was not about you. And I have to do that about like probably once a month. Just tell someone like, okay, this was not about you. I can promise you that.
Have you ever been like, yes? Yes, it was actually.
Thank God it's actually never happened where someone's asked me whether something was about them and it actually was, unless it was and I just don't know enough about the situation. But it hasn't happened yet.
Do you remember what you told this person? I vaguely remember your advice was quite reassuring about, you know, these kind of, it's normal to be curious about other people's lives and things like that.
Yeah, I think I said, like, as long as it's not someone that you actually know and whose trust you would be betraying by, like, like if it's like really low stakes, if it's like you want to see, like, the Beyonce video that someone sung badly in 4 years ago and you don't really, you know, you're not, like, dating them or something, like, fine, like, go ham. I kind of thought that this is almost like this is someone who probably needed to be, like, a journalist or something. Like, I felt like this is someone who was, like, this was their calling and they didn't realise it. They thought it was a problem, but actually it could be like, it could be their Harriet the Spy moment. So I think I said, like, go for it, as long as you're not, like, you know, looking at your partner's diary or whatever, which is like a different sort of snooping.
So this is what Harriet the Spy did with your advice.
Kia ora, Hera. Nice to hear from you again, and thank you for answering my cry for advice. It did help. A lot of what I was feeling was my moral stick-up assedness about all of my actions, which makes me feel guilty about normal things eternally and perpetually. So I appreciated reassurance that casual, harmless snooping is a human trait, and it's normal and also beneficial. But every time I feel like snooping on something I really shouldn't be, a tiny Hera appears on my shoulder to recite, "Snooping on people you love isn't curiosity. It's a manifestation of untreated anxiety which will slowly erode all your closest relationships and eventually leave you bereft of any true intimacy," until I drop it and mind my own damn business. It was also really funny that you suggested I write fiction, because I do. And I know a lot of writers who have given me advice along the lines of go eavesdrop on some people in a coffee shop and write down everything they say. I know mine wasn't the most life-changing advice, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Also, I love your poetry. Unrelated, but you rock.
I think that was actually Damien Wilkins. No, I'm just kidding.
I think that was quite a nice... Sometimes you do get people asking in who... It's almost the opposite of like high stakes... What is it? Low stakes, high drama, where they really believe this thing is this huge problem, and then you just need to reassure them that it's probably fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of advice is like people being paranoid about stuff that for other people is really normal and they would never think about twice. You know, like we would just be like, let's just Google that and see which part of Auckland they live in. And other people like feel this really intense like morals. You know, they've got like this scrupulosity. Oh God, I can't say that properly.
Don't look at me.
Scrupulousness. And so I think a lot of advice giving is just being like, well, it's like a normal human thing to do. Like, don't beat yourself up about it.
We have 4 minutes left in our session. What has been your favourite question to answer?
They're all... I have like a real love for the low stakes etiquette ones, which I sort of feel like that vegetable question kind of falls quite neatly into. And like, I think my neighbours pissing on my fence was quite a good one as well. Like things that you sort of that I really have to think quite hard about, because a lot of the time it's giving people like generic reassurance about like, you know, things will be all right. And this is how you make a career as an artist, or like this relationship doesn't sound that good for you. But when it's like, how do I stop my neighbours peeing on my property? It's like, it's difficult.
You gave some good advice there actually, and the person did do an update, but also much like a fair few of the updates was I was too chicken shit to do the thing that you suggested, but I think it's fine. I think it's fine anyway. It went away.
I did nothing and it was fine.
Yeah, that's the Hera
That's the theme of the Help Me Hera. If any of you have a problem, just ignore it.
I think we probably have to wrap it up. We're technically over time, but I feel like that first 5 minutes didn't count. But I don't think Hannah Playhouse follows that same rule. So once again, thank you so much for coming out. I know it's a very, very lovely day. I was kind of looking out going, I wouldn't be surprised if people just stayed outside. So thank you for making your way in. Thank you to Hera, of course. Thank you to Hannah Playhouse, The Embassy, Amy Atkins, I'm reading a list, sorry. Tina Tiller, Tiahe Butler, Ben Fagan, Maddie, Asher, Jim, Andrea, Rosa, Joe, Scott, and all the Hannah Playhouse team. And if you'd like to come to our next...
Kia ora e te iwi, Tiahe Butler here, podcast manager at The Spinoff. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spinoff member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Do you find it hard staying optimistic with all the financial news in the media? I'm Bernard Hickey, and on my podcast, When the Facts Change, I'm here to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of economics in Aotearoa. So join the conversation every Friday on When the Facts Change, brought to you by the Spinoff Podcast Network in partnership with KiwiBit.
Kia ora, this is Toby Manhire, here to urge you to tune in to Gone by Lunchtime, a podcast with me, Annabelle Lee Mather and Ben Thomas, tackling the world of New Zealand politics, from policy to polling, from scandal to psychodrama. Listen to Gone by Lunchtime, brought to you by the Spinoff Podcast Network, wherever good pods are sold.
Next event in Wellington, it is the Year in Review with Anna Rafeti-Connell and Joel McManus, and it will be on Wednesday, November 13. So you can get your tickets at spinoff.co.nz/events. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The Spinoff Podcast Network.